Invest Africa, proudly brought to you by KPMG.
Hello and welcome. We're coming to you from the 16th floor of the Metro Centre in Braamfontain, that's in Johannesburg. I'm sitting down with the CEO of Johannesburg Incorporated, that's Mayor Park Stow. And today we're going to be interrogating the investment case of the City of Gold. I'm Nozipho Mbanjwa. Mayor, thank you so much for making the time to join us. Now, the last time we spoke, I think you had just begun explaining to me around the concepts of the corridors of freedom and all the ambitious projects that the city was about to embark on. Maybe let's give you a moment just to bring us up to speed in terms of the flagship programs of the city and where we stand on that front.
The Corridors of Freedom is a key program that we're running as the City of Johannesburg because it is about spatial transformation. It is about achieving multiple objectives. The first of those objectives is about redress of the spatial legacy of the City of Johannesburg. Like any other South African cities, South African cities have been designed for exclusion, for segregation, for discrimination, with historically black townships. On the periphery, they are monofunctional. They do not have access to adequate social and other infrastructure, including economic infrastructure. Historically, commercial centers were not allowed to be developed in areas like Soweto, Lenessie, and so on. And the Corridors of Freedom are about redressing that spatial legacy of the City of Johannesburg and ensuring that we're able to build a city of more equity and more justice, because cities are about accessibility to amenities. It is also about another objective which relates to achieving the benefits of economies of scale and agglomeration, the efficiencies of an urban system that you achieve from scale and agglomeration. And let me make an example. Like South African cities, Johannesburg is sparsely populated relatively, in that we have low densities, we have long distances that people travel, we have long distances between activities and amenities, and we need to bring people and activity and amenity closer to each other. And the Corridors of Freedom are about ensuring that we're able to achieve that. But we're also able to increase density. The nature of land use and developments in Johannesburg, particularly on the residential side, is primarily one-stand units. There are fairly low densities. We're not using our densities more optimally. So when other cities use less kilometers of roads, less kilometers of wire to collect electricity, less trucks to collect waste, we use more because of the nature of the design of the city. So for you to achieve those efficiencies, you need to design your city to have increased densities and increased intensity of land uses.
You've said the word design quite a number of times. How is the Joburg skyline about to change? And more practically speaking, what does it mean when we talk about increasing the densities of our spatial location for the ordinary person who lives in Alexandra and has to access their work opportunities in Sandton? What does this ambitious project mean for them?
If you look at the areas along which we've designed the Corridors of Freedom, the first indicator is that there's adequate public transport, and that's a very important indicator. So we've got the bus rapid transit system as the spine of the corridor. So if you look along Louis Potter Road, if you look along Empire Perth towards Soweto, and if you look at the designs going towards Braamfontain, we've ensured that mobility becomes an important part of accessing the city so that people can access the city equitably through efficient public transport. But it is also about increasing densities. So we've designed strategic area frameworks along these corridors where people would be able to develop higher densities and high intensities of land uses. In fact, Council recently approved these strategic area frameworks, which enable developers and property owners to access development rights that are higher in terms of density. So if you think of Skyline, think about 3 or 4 times more densities along certain parts of Louis Porter Road. And on certain strategic nodes, higher density nodes, even higher densities than that, so that you're able to achieve those efficiencies along the corridor. But we're not just talking about the road itself, we're talking about a corridor, so it would cover a radius larger than the actual route that is Louis Porter.
But the contention will always be the closer you come to the urban centres, the more expensive the property becomes and the cost of living becomes. When we're talking about these high density areas, have we kept top of mind accessibility in terms of cost for the average person who would otherwise not be able to afford to live in such an area?
We've had a number of initiatives as the City of Johannesburg to do exactly that, to ensure equitable access to the city. One of those is that we've been procuring strategic portions of land for public housing developments and public infrastructure developments. We're investing about 3.3 billion rands over the next 3 years along the corridors to ensure that there's adequate infrastructure, and it's not always dependent on the developer. So it's not a developer-driven initiative. It is an initiative that's primarily driven by government in partnership with developers and property owners. But we need to ensure that we have adequate public amenities, including clinics, including public schools, including public housing stock, rental stock, social housing, and those sorts of amenities that are available in the corridors.
Let's talk a little bit about water infrastructure. That came into the spotlight, particularly for the province, the entire province of Gauteng around September, when we had a water crisis of sorts. Let's talk about what you're doing to make sure that the water infrastructure is not only maintained, but we have a state-of-the-art water structure for the city.
And we have to look at it from 2 ways. The first is if you look on the supply side, we are always dependent on the Lesotho Highlands schemes and rainwater for the supply of water. There's something we all need to realize, is that the Lesotho Highlands schemes are coming on board in 2019, 2020. It was always anticipated that by the time we reach 2015, we will begin to face the equilibrium between water and supply. Simply because of the number of people that are coming to Johannesburg. Now, there are a number of things that we've done to ensure that we can guarantee supply of water. The first is about improving the quality of our own infrastructure and reducing unaccounted for water, because that ensures that we're able to continuously supply people with water in the city of Johannesburg. And creatively look at ways in which we can ensure that people are continuously able to access water. We've ensured that we're able to keep, and the supply of water has remained the same to the city of Johannesburg, but we've kept the same reserve margin because of the investments that we're making. So if you look at the water system, it works in this way. We get a quota of water supply from rainwater per day. We've kept the same margin for the past 4 years.
How does that percentage compare to what you're getting from the Lesotho Highlands project? I'm asking because of the political tensions in Lesotho, and whether this now poses an additional threat to the supply of water into the city.
Look, water recycling is an important part of the issues that we have to look at, but we are reliant on the Lesotho Highlands schemes, but also KwaZulu-Natal. So we've got 2 primary supply sources for water. The tension in Lesotho, of course, would influence water supply into Johannesburg and Gauteng in particular. So it is an important issue that we need to consider. It hasn't so far indicated that it could negatively impact. And I think the government of Lesotho has handled the matter quite well in terms of guaranteeing reliability of supply and ensuring continuous developments of the Lesotho Highlands scheme. So from that point of view, we don't think that there's a problem on the supply side. Of course, we just have to be realistic and accept that the new developments of the schemes would only come on board in the medium term. And in the short term, we have to look on the other side, which is now where we're focusing our attention to. We're currently investigating and, in fact, consider technologies that are about reducing demand for water on the demand side, so that you're able to match the demand with supply. but also to anticipate the impact on the cost of water on the people of Johannesburg. Because if large infrastructure is built, it comes at a cost. If you're able to spread out the cost, it is easier to be able to finance it. But if you have to do it in a short space of time, the impact is much larger.
Mr. Mayor, the other side of that equation, of course, is the energy inputs. And again, the entire country is somewhat going through an energy crisis. Let's bring it back to the city of Johannesburg and get a sense of the impact that this is having on the city. But more importantly, looking forward, what kind of investment threat does this pose to you if we can't get stability in the supply of energy, especially for the business community?
The city of Johannesburg has developed a diversified energy mix as an approach to guaranteeing energy supply into the city. Amongst those would be, in lower income households, we provide solar water geysers, but we also ensure that we're able to utilize solar water more effectively. We're also generating energy from waste and wastewater, so we reduce demand from municipal infrastructure. So if you look at our wastewater treatment plants, we've now converted them into generating their own energy out of the sludge in the sewer treatment plants, and we're beginning to generate energy from our landfill sites.
Is it enough to protect you from this potential crisis?
It's not always enough. That's why we're diversifying the mix, so that by diversifying the mix, we can ensure that we reduce the pressure on the supply side. The dependence on Eskom and the large supply sources is not always the solution, at least in our opinion. Diversifying the mix is important. One of the things that we're looking at is how do we reduce demand by increasing the reach of our gas supply sources, so that you use gas for water, heating, cooking, and those sorts of things. So by increasing gas reticulation, we currently have a 15% reach in terms of gas reticulation through EqualiGas. Now, if you can increase gas reticulation, you need less electricity to be able to access your for purposes of cooking, heating, and cooling. And that's about diversifying the energy mix and therefore not reliant on coal-fired power stations rather as the primary source of energy.
We're going to take a short break now. We are sitting with the CEO of the city of Johannesburg, and for a large part of this conversation we've been looking at economic infrastructure and how that supports the city's investment case. I'll see you right after the break. Welcome back to this special broadcast of Invest Africa. Now, before we went to the break, we were sitting down with the CEO of Johannesburg Incorporated, that's Mayor Parks Stau, and we're talking about economic infrastructure and how that supports the investment case for the city. We move on now to broadband infrastructure in particular and understand from the Mayor how he is moving the city towards a digital city. Mr. Mayor, thank you once again. Let's talk about broadband infrastructure. There's a dual target here. There's access to broadband that we need to meet, but also it's about reducing the cost of broadband so that it becomes accessible to the broader population. How are we doing on those two fronts?
The city has invested in about 900 kilometers of fiber optic cabling throughout the city of Johannesburg, and the idea really is about ensuring that we're able to use it for municipal use and that we're able to on-sell access infrastructure into the public, and public being about ensuring equitable access to broadband infrastructure for people that do not have access to the internet. 50% of the people of Johannesburg do not have access to the internet. So it's important that we address the digital divide as an important development issue, but it's also about ensuring that we're able to reduce the cost of telecommunications in Johannesburg. The cost of telecommunications has been identified as one of the great inhibitors to growth and development in the city, this coupled with the infrastructure. As the key inhibitors to growth and development. So for us, that's an important part of why we're investing in broadband infrastructure. We're taking a report to council on the 10th of December, which report is considering the establishment of a municipal-owned entity, which would then take responsibility for the broadband network and be able to supply the network. Of course, we don't want to establish huge telecommunications departments in a municipality, so we'd be contracting and partnering with private sector partners that would be able to ensure the execution at the back of our infrastructure.
Do we have a broad overall target that we're chasing as a city on the back of some of the initiatives that you've just discussed?
Well, if you talk about access, for example, we've said that we need to install 1,000 free Wi-Fi hotspots throughout the city of Johannesburg by June 2016, meaning that we need to move with speed to ensure that there's free access to, of course, it's kept at a particular amount, but you have access points in particular parts of the city. And that you have universal access, meaning that people can literally access the infrastructure themselves if they want to transact with the municipality and access the broadband networks. And that universal access should be achieved by 2016. So for us, it's a very ambitious target, but it's an important target because one of the things, we were looking at the Oxford Martin Brooks report on future generations and the challenges that the developing world faces. And one of the key issues that has been identified is the reality that in the developing world, it is about access to and the speed of broadband and internet. And unless we're able to address access, we'll lag behind in terms of development from the rest of the world.
So 1,000 Wi-Fi hotspots by 2016, that's a target we're going to hold you to, and hopefully we'll pick up the conversation in 2016 to see how you've done on that front. Let's talk about job creation in the city. Ambitious projects already in action, Josie at work. Just give us a sense of the kind of numbers that you've been able to generate in terms of sustainable employment opportunities through this particular program.
Josie at Work is a community co-production model. It's about redefining the relationship of the city with its citizens. It's about forming partnerships with citizens as conduits through which we implement municipal services and as a partnership between the municipality and its people. And co-production is an internationally accepted and developed model of building dynamic relationships between government and people. We have currently been working on procuring cooperatives and community-based enterprises. We've registered a lot of these. We've helped them register with the CIPRO. We're currently taking them through training. We've also procured the services of what we call capability support agencies. We expect that the first workflow would begin to flow towards these enterprises early in the new year. Our target is to create about 12,000 jobs through Josie at Work. And this is only using municipal procurement. And this is using 10% of our current budget. And not 10% of the entire budget. It's actually 10% of our contracted services budget, 10% of our repairs and maintenance budget, and 5% of our capex. And we'd want to build on this because I have no doubt that if this succeeds, we can be able to build on those numbers and create more job opportunities. On the other hand, we're creating hubs throughout the cities that would enable us to support small enterprises. We have already created a digital hub in Braamfontain together with Wits University, where there's high-speed broadband access for those who are involved in development of application software, and they have free high-speed access to broadband.
It certainly sounds like the overriding objective is to lower the barriers to enable more and more young people to participate in the labor economy. Let's talk about the apprenticeship program that you also made mention of in your State of the City address. How far are we with that? Is that something that we're likely to see kick off in the near future?
The apprenticeship program is part of the Jozi at Work initiative. It is a program where people who participate in Jozi at Work also get access to training as part of the apprenticeship program. So people would be trained, they won't just establish companies and enterprises, they would be trained, they would be helped to graduate, they would be helped to access recognition to prior learning, and graduated out of the system so that they are able to grow their enterprises and become more competitive. One of the key challenges our economy is currently facing is that small enterprises are sharing jobs, and it's large enterprises that are creating jobs. And that model internationally is accepted as a model that's not going to deliver the goods. So we need to focus a lot of attention on small enterprise development. So we working with a number of agencies to ensure that those people that access opportunities are also able to access training as a means of graduating out of the system.
One of the sectors that seems to be growing at quite a rapid pace in Johannesburg is that of tourism. I mean, consistently, Cape Town has managed to knock Johannesburg, always taking the top spot in terms of tourism numbers, but there somehow seems to be a shift in that ranking. Talk to us a little bit about the initiatives around bolstering and supporting the tourism sector, and whether you are officially going to claim the #1 spot soon.
We've claimed the #1 spot. Johannesburg is now recognized as the most visited city on the African continent. And that has been a great achievement for a city like Johannesburg.
What are people coming here to see, though?
They're coming here to experience commerce. They're coming here for opportunity. They're coming here to interact with the people of Johannesburg and to get exposure to what Johannesburg is. This is the cosmopolitan center of Africa. This is the gateway to Africa. And this is where people are able to interact, to mingle, to find opportunity. So people come here for those purposes. So we've found that we've worked historically on what is called the My Sector, meetings, incentives, conferences, exhibitions, as a primary means of promoting Johannesburg. But we've now extended that to leisure tourism so that people are able to spend more time in Johannesburg. And we're seeing that more and more people come to Johannesburg, spend more time, and they go to other leisure destinations throughout the country. You've got the game reserves, you've got the sea in Cape Town, in Durban, in PE that people want to experience. But no doubt people are beginning to spend more time in Johannesburg. And there are places that are vibrant in Johannesburg. Braamfontain has become a very vibrant destination. Rosebank is a vibrant destination. Maboneng in the inner city is vibrant. So people are beginning to experience culture, because when people go into cities and countries, they also want to experience people. They want to experience the local vibe, so to say. And this is where you really experience that. And the diversity of people that are in Johannesburg just makes it that place to visit, to experience Africa in one place.
Investment opportunities in the tourism space. As an investor listening to this passionate description of the vibe in Johannesburg, how do you tap into it with the view of making a return?
If you look at what's happening with the development of hotels, restaurants, in leisure activities in Johannesburg, that's expanding quite significantly. So there's huge investment potential in Johannesburg. This is coupled by the fact that we are beginning to expose Johannesburg in terms of its cultural vibrancy, its museums, its artistic expression, as a means of introducing people to Johannesburg, because any person that visits a city wants to know its people. So the growth of our museums, investments in cultural infrastructure, in public art, is very important as part of promoting why people come to a city like Johannesburg. But reality is that our most important asset has been the people of Johannesburg, and they've begun to take responsibility for what Johannesburg is.
Final question, what makes Johannesburg a world-class city?
As I said, it's people. It's the ability to be a cosmopolitan city, a city that attracts many, a city that's open for business, a city that promotes entrepreneurship, that people go to for opportunity. And world-class cities are where people go for opportunity. But it's also an ambitious city. It's ambitious from the point of view of how it positions itself and how the municipality positions itself in terms of how we see Johannesburg playing a role in South Africa and on the African continent and internationally.
A world-class city, a city that is ambitious, that is brimming with opportunity and is indeed open for business. That is the word from the CEO of Johannesburg Incorporated. That's the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, Mayor Park Star. For myself and the Invest Africa team, until next time, it's goodbye for now.